One real mafia boss nearly destroyed The Godfather before cameras even rolled. But that's just the beginning of the insane true story behind Hollywood's greatest crime film. Most people think they know The Godfather. They remember Brando's raspy voice, the horse head, the family dinners. But what they don't know is that actual mobsters were pulling strings behind the scenes, threatening to shut down production unless their demands were met. The executives at Paramount Studios absolutely despised Marlon Brando. They called him washed up, unemployable, a walking disaster. Studio head Stanley Jaffe made it crystal clear that Brando would never appear in their picture as long as he was president. But Francis Ford Coppola had other plans. He convinced Brando to do something that would change cinema forever, a secret makeup test at home. Brando stuffed cotton balls into his cheeks, slicked back his hair, and transformed into something unrecognizable. When Coppola secretly showed the footage to Paramount executives, they couldn't even tell it was Brando. The man they'd banned from Hollywood suddenly looked like the perfect Don Corleone. But their approval came with brutal conditions. Brando had to work for free, no upfront salary whatsoever. He also had to post a $1 million bond to guarantee he wouldn't disrupt production, and he still had to submit to a screen test like some unknown actor. That gamble by Coppola set Brando up for an Oscar win. But the real madness was just getting started. Remember that horrifying horsehead scene? The one that made audiences jump out of their seats? That wasn't special effects. It was a real horse head from a New Jersey slaughterhouse. Coppola wanted pure shock value, so he obtained an actual severed horse head used for dog food. It arrived on set in a cooler. And here's the twisted part. The actors had no idea it was real. When John Marley woke up and brushed his foot against that cold, damp head, his reaction was completely authentic. He recoiled, vomited, and screamed with genuine terror. The fear you see on screen wasn't acting, it was lived. Coppola later said, if the audience doesn't jump out of their seats on this one, you've failed. That organic terror transformed the scene forever and gave new meaning to cinematic intimidation. But before Hollywood even got its first take, The Godfather was already tangled up with real mob politics. Joseph Colombo, a powerful mafia boss and leader of the Italian-American Civil Rights League, was furious about how Italians were being portrayed. Colombo demanded that words like mafia and Cosa Nostra be completely removed from the script. He threatened to organize union protests and block the movie from being made if his terms weren't met. The producers' hands were tied. Albert Ruddy made a deal with the devil. They agreed to remove those words, let Colombo's group read the script before filming, and donate premiere profits to an Italian-American hospital. This wasn't just business. This was survival. Colombo's power was real. Over 50,000 people attended his rallies. But when Colombo was shot in public in 1971, everything took a dark turn. Suddenly, people realized The Godfather's story was matching what was happening behind the scene. The movie wasn't just about the mafia. The real mafia was involved in its production, making it terrifyingly authentic. Coppola did everything possible to maintain authenticity, even down to family relationships. Before filming began, he hosted dinners at Pat's in East Harlem, where the entire cast had to stay in character while eating. James Caan, Robert Duvall, Diane Keaton, Al Pacino, Talia Shire, and Marlon Brando all attended, dressed and behaving as their Corleone roles. While pasta was passed around, every actor improvised dialogue and built familial dynamics. Robert Duvall recalled how Brando would command the table, saying every time Brando looked away, he'd make an impression. Real mob figures even attended these dinners. The rawness of this atmosphere permeated every scene, creating bonds that made the cast feel like genuine family. Before cameras rolled, these actors already belonged to each other, but that family was about to lose a member. Al Pacino's job hung by a thread after just 1 week of production. The early footage showed a man so understated that Paramount brass panicked. Pacino was too quiet, too weak, definitely not the type who could deliver exceptional roles. Studio executives were convinced he lacked charisma and immediately demanded he be recast. They considered Ryan O'Neal, Robert Redford, and Warren Beatty as replacements. During a tense meeting, Coppola told everyone that Pacino wasn't cutting it. When they watched the early footage together, Pacino said he recalled thinking the scenes weren't spectacular, but that's exactly what he wanted. He didn't want to stand out. This made Coppola sense there might be more potential than he initially thought. So Coppola pulled a dramatic move. He reordered the shooting schedule to fast-track the pivotal restaurant assassination sequence. It was in this electrifying scene that viewers truly saw Pacino's talent. The scene had Michael taking the lives of Sollozzo and McCluskey. Pacino gave this scene everything, and the intensity shocked everyone. He later said because of that scene, they kept him in the film. Once again, Coppola's gamble paid off. If he hadn't done what he did, both the director and star would have been replaced, and Pacino's quiet magnetism would have been lost forever. But while Coppola was saving his actors' jobs, his own career was hanging by a thread. Paramount executives were running out of patience with Coppola. They believed his pacing was too slow and were deeply concerned about costs. They even contemplated bringing in an experienced director to replace him. Behind the scenes, Coppola was battling daily. Some editors complained he wasn't shooting enough footage. Coppola later spoke about having a strong feeling he could be fired at any moment, but he held firm to his beliefs, fired everyone who conspired against the movie's growth, and constantly rallied his team to deliver transformative dailies. His team stood strongly by his side. Marlon Brando even threatened to walk out if they dared remove Coppola. Once the studio saw the groundbreaking scenes he was creating, Michael's shocking transformation, Don's imposing calm, they finally understood his vision. They realized he was transforming what should have been a formulaic gangster film into a family saga and American epic. This made him a legend, but the authenticity came from studying real sources. Coppola and producer Albert Ruddy aimed for authenticity from an extremely surprising source: real-life mafia figures. They studied Frank Costello, nicknamed the Prime Minister of the Mafia, through old FBI recordings and government hearing tapes. Brando paid close attention to how Costello spoke: slow, quiet, and raspy. Using what he learned, Brando shaped Don's voice, making his character feel much more real than the loud, over-the-top gangsters usually seen in movies. During filming, things became extremely interesting when real mobsters began visiting the set. According to crew members, crime boss Russell Bufalino sent two men to meet Brando, but not to hurt him. Brando joked that one looked like a rat and the other was huge. The two men only came to tell Brando he was doing a good job. In their words, "Hi Marlon, you're a great actor." Brando spoke about how weird and powerful this was, a fake criminal being complimented by real ones. This boost in confidence helped him act better and made the movie feel much more authentic. But Brando had some unusual methods that made his performance even more natural. Brando never memorized lines for The Godfather. Instead, he relied on cue cards strategically placed around the set. These prompts helped him maintain spontaneity and reactive energy. Brando believed that by reading his lines in the moment, he could keep his reactions alive and organic. Coppola endorsed this approach, knowing it would result in subtle authenticity. Brando's method meant he responded naturally, rather than reciting memorized speeches. This made all of Brando's performances feel effortless and compelling. But his most iconic moment happened completely by accident. Remember that moment when Don Corleone cradled a cat during the wedding? That wasn't in any script. A scruffy stray cat wandered onto the set, and during one take, Brando scooped it up and stroked it while delivering his lines. The scene felt so real that directors couldn't cut it, but the cat's purring was so loud they had to dub parts of his dialogue later. Coppola was the first to see the emotional depth this unscripted moment brought. He knew people would love watching a ruthless mafia boss stroking a gentle animal. It added texture and humanity to the character. Speaking of hidden meanings, true Godfather fans know that oranges meant death. Every time you saw oranges, death was lurking somewhere. From Vito buying oranges at the market before being ambushed to the bowl of fruit on Jack Woltz's table before the horsehead scene. This wasn't the original plan. Production designer Dean Tavoularis chose oranges because they added visual contrast against the film's dark palette. When Coppola realized the pattern, he turned it into a thematic motif to convey impending doom. As time passed, fans realized what was happening and came to love this hidden symbolism. But the studio had different ideas about saving money. Initially, Paramount wanted the Godfather set in the 1970s with bell-bottoms, wood panel station wagons, and disco vibes. They wanted to cut costs on costumes, sets, and vintage props. This didn't sit well with Coppola, who argued that the Corleone saga's emotional core required a period setting. He fought so fiercely that eventually the studio agreed to a 1940s production with period cars and vintage interiors. This almost cost Coppola his job, because executives were confident They were hemorrhaging money. But authenticity required sacrifice. Behind every iconic scene lay production chaos. The bloody toll booth assassination that marked Sonny Corleone's brutal end was a nightmare to shoot. James Caan had to wear over 100 tiny explosive charges, placed strategically on his clothing, to mimic gunshot hits. Caan said the explosives going off felt like being punched all over, and if his hands had covered a squib, it would have left a hole in him. They filmed for 3 whole days, exceeding the budgeted 1 or 2 days. Every squib had to be timed precisely with gunshot effects. Cameras had to be rewired constantly to catch every explosive burst in slow motion. Muzzle flashes had to be synchronized perfectly. While all this was happening, Caan was bombarded with fake bullets over and over again. Any failure meant the entire scene had to be reshot. The dedication to realism was absolutely insane. But the casting could have been completely different. Before James Caan was cast as Sonny, Robert De Niro nearly got the role. In 1971, De Niro auditioned with intense, volatile energy that everyone said nailed the part, but he still didn't get it. De Niro didn't leave empty-handed, though. He got the role of Paulie Gatto, but scheduling conflicts forced him into another project. Coppola remembered his talent, so when it was time for Godfather Part 2, De Niro got the pivotal role of young Vito Corleone. The original casting decisions created ripple effects that changed cinema history. Marlon Brando won Best Actor for The Godfather on March 27, 1973. But surprisingly, he never showed up to get the award. Instead, he sent a 26-year-old Apache activist named Sachin Littlefeather. The most shocking part? She wasn't coming to accept the award. She was coming to decline it. This was Brando's protest of Hollywood's treatment of Native Americans and the Wounded Knee standoff. As Sachin spoke, boos and cheers filled the hall. John Wayne reportedly had to be restrained from confronting her. The consequences were severe. Sachin was blacklisted from opportunities for decades. In 2022, the Academy formally apologized to her and acknowledged the immense mistreatment she'd endured. Brando wasn't being dramatic. He was being political. To him, Hollywood portrayed Native Americans in racist, stereotypical ways, and he refused to be associated with that. Despite the movie's massive scope, the budget was incredibly small, approximately $6 million. Despite vintage cars, costumes, and elaborate sets needed to recreate the 1940s and 50s world, they used minimal money. Paramount monitored every expense, forcing Coppola to become ingenious. He reused props, costumes, and sets whenever possible. Most costumes for extras were rented secondhand from canceled productions. Interior decorations used furniture borrowed from other studio projects. For scenes requiring large crowds, Coppola employed wardrobe tricks like hat changes and collar switches to make crowds appear larger. Even food was economized. After on-camera banquets, the same food was passed to the crew. Everything done to cut costs didn't compromise the film's authenticity, because Coppola spent money on key elements like Brando's transformation and the toll booth sequence. But the realism came from an unexpected source. Some cast members had actual mob ties. Lenny Montana wasn't just an actor playing Luca Brasi. He was a former professional wrestler and enforcer for the Colombo crime family. Before Coppola discovered his powerful presence while protecting the Colombo family on set, Lenny had been a mob bodyguard. When Lenny stuttered nervously with his lines, Coppola saw it as raw emotion, not bad performance. Lenny had sincere fear of performing, but he did it with vulnerability the production had never seen before. Having real mob connections on set added layers of authenticity that couldn't be faked. The film's iconic music almost faced disaster at the Oscars. Italian maestro Nino Rota was nominated for Best Original Score, but he was disqualified when the Academy learned the love theme had already been used in his 1958 Italian film Fortunella. Rota didn't blatantly copy the piece. He self-recycled it by slowing it down and molding it into a tragic, melancholic refrain. When the Academy discovered the reuse, they removed Rota from nomination and replaced him with John Addison's score for Sleuth. Even the music had controversy attached to it. Diane Keaton had no idea what The Godfather was about when she auditioned. She hadn't read the script and was unaware of the story's plot. She was just glad to be there and had no idea what she was doing. Back then, Keaton had just started her career and was eager to get any job. She confessed the only thing she knew was that she'd be working with Al Pacino, an actor she truly admired. Sometimes, the The best performances come from actors who dive in completely blind. The ending we know wasn't the original plan. Early versions had Kay Adams walking away after the office door closed, leaving her emotional state ambiguous. But Coppola wasn't satisfied. He decided the camera should linger on Kay's face longer, changing the entire tone. Instead of just walking away, she had to watch behind a closed door as Michael received his capo's loyalty. The camera zoomed in on her face so audiences could see her stunned, betrayed expression. This made her heartbreak visible and unforgettable, creating one of cinema's most powerful endings. The Godfather became legendary, not just because of what we see on screen, but because of the insane true story happening behind the cameras. Real mobsters, genuine terror, political protests, and near firings created a perfect storm that resulted in cinematic history. Which of these secrets shocked you the most? The real horsehead, the mob's involvement, or Brando's political Oscar rejection? Let me know in the comments. And if this blew your mind, smash that like button and subscribe for more Hollywood secrets they don't want you to know.